this video we are going to take a look at the clever way of animating the hands and the feet of our player character. So the typical way of doing the animation would be to have already ready-made animation frames from another program, like maybe you created your animation in After Effects or some other animation program. But in our case we are actually going to do all the animations here in Construct, and basically I'm going to give, let's start with the foot here. I'm going to give it a behavior. So I'm going to go to the behaviors here and I'm going to hit on the plus symbol, and there's this interesting behavior called sign, which basically will give us this kind of waveform that we can use to move things around. So I will select this sine wave here, and we can see that there's now all these different options here. Let's leave it active on start just for the moment. We will remove this a bit later. And for the movement here, we want to change the angle of the foot. And then let's make the period, which is just the time in seconds that it takes to complete the cycle. Let's set it to 1. So one cycle lasts 1 second. And let's see how this goes. Maybe the magnitude, which is basically the angles that the leg is swinging, maybe 50 is a bit much. Let's try 30. Okay, and let's see what happens if I start this layout. So we can see that the leg is doing a rather weird movement, and that's kind of funny, but obviously not really what we wanted. And the problem here is that the anchor point of the foot is not correct. So the image point, Construct calls it the image point. So let me just double click here on the foot. The collision polygon is also a mess. It doesn't really matter, but let's just set it to the bounding box. And now I will select this origin point here, and I want to set this where I would like to see the leg turn. So I changed that, and now I need to reposition the leg because it moved a little bit because of that operation. So now it makes more sense. Now the leg is swinging like we would maybe expect it. Of course it looks very weird because he only has one of these legs. So let's fix that. Let's call, first of all, let's call this leg here player foot graphic R, or right. So it's going to be his right leg. And then let's just clone this object. So I'm going to say clone object type, and let's set it here for now. I'm going to resize it a little bit so that the size is similar to the other leg. Maybe just a little bit like that. Something like that, yes. And now I will, first of all, I will call this one player foot graphic L for left, and I will send this to back, send this to the back. So Z right click, so right click when the foot is selected, Z order send to the bottom of the layer, and now it can go behind here. And I will position it in the same place with the other foot, but then we want to obviously offset it because the right and the left leg are kind of doing the opposite thing. So here we have this period offset, which lets us offset it in time, and here we can offset it randomly, but we don't want to do anything random. We simply want to offset it by 0.5 so that they should do the opposite movement. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, so we can see that basically it's working, but can you guess what's wrong here? Because we cloned the object type, we need to also pin this leg to the player, to the real player box in the start of the layout. So now we have two objects that we need to worry about. So let's just fix that. I'm going to go to my event sheet, and here on the start of the layout I'm going to copy this player foot graphic R, Ctrl C, Ctrl V, and let's just double click and change this object to the other foot. So player foot graphic L, and that's fine. So now, whoops, now I messed up. it's actually easiest if I just right click here and say replace object, and I want to replace the foot with this foot L. So now I'm pinning both of these objects. So let's see if that looks better. Yeah, so now we can see that the feet are already kind of working here. And there's some weird things still with the Z order, like here, because now the other foot is the very last thing on this in this layout, but that's okay. I'm gonna fix those things later, but let's now make the hands move as well. So it's a similar process. I'm going to select the hand here, player hand graphic. Let's make it hand R, and let's give it the sign behavior. So behaviors plus and sign. Let's change the movement to be angle, period to be 1, and magnitude can be, I guess, let's make it 20. And let's see where the image point of this hand is. We want to have it here. And let's see how that looks. Let's move the hand to the right position here, and let's see how that works. Alright, so now our hand is moving. It's just that this hand should always be back when the right foot is in the front, the right hand should be in the back. So let's offset that one. So I will give this hand a period offset of 0.5. And then let's copy the hand. So let's duplicate. I right click and choose clone object type. And let's we can also just copy the scale. So I can go here and there's the size. I can just Control C, select this hand, select the size, Control V, and that way I can automatically make them the right size. Let me move this hand to the back. So right click, Z order, send to bottom of layer, and then I will move it here, and then I will change this player hand graphic to be left. And for the left one, which I have now selected, I don't want any period offset, so that should be 0. Let's see how this looks. And before we try it, let's remember to also pin this new hand into the real player. So Control C, Control V, and I'm going to replace the right hand, replace object, right hand with the player hand graphic L. So now we are pinning both the right and the left hand and foot. Alright, let's see how that looks. Alright, so now it's looking good, and the opposite hand is doing the movement when the right leg is in the front, the hand is in the back, so that looks correct. Of course, it's a little bit silly that even if I stop, he is still continuing this movement. So maybe that's the next thing we want to change. Like, we don't want him to walk when we are not pressing any button here. So maybe what we can do is we can, first of all, let's remove this active on start from each one of these things, because we don't want it to automatically happen. We only want this movement to happen if the player is actually moving the character around. So I want to make sure that the hands and the feet have the active on start for the sign, behavior at no. Alright, so now let me go to my event sheet here, and I think I will do it here inside the player category. Let's add a sub event by pressing S, and I will take my keyboard to show you how to invert things, so we can create inverse conditions as well. So let's take this key is down. So we want to see if the right key is down. Okay, so that's what this event is now doing. It's taking a look at if the right arrow is being pressed down. But now we want to invert this. We want to see if the key is not down. So we can right click here and we can say invert, and it makes this little X here to signify that the event is now inverted. So now that it's inverted, now we can add an action. Actually, let's just copy all of these here. So I'm just going to select all of these, Control C, Control V, and let me just set them inactive. So we want to stop the sign. Alright, so let's see how that works. So now, if I press right, he moves, but as soon as I stop pressing right, he stops moving. And I think that's fine. Maybe, I'm not sure yet, we might maybe later make the position return to a neutral stance, but for now let's have it work like this. And focus next on the left side, left movement. Okay, so obviously this is not working very well. When we press left, then he's just like moonwalking or sliding backwards. So let's go and take a look at that. So basically we can copy these two categories, or actually let me just copy this one. So Control C, Control V, and I'm going to change this key to be the left arrow. So what's happening here now is that if the left arrow is pressed, we also want to set this sign active. And here we can make a condition that checks if neither one of the arrows is down, then we set it inactive. So let's add another condition here. Do you remember how to do that? It was by pressing C, or of course I could right click and say add another condition, but I just like to use these keyboard shortcuts. So C, and then I will simply go to keyboard and I will check if key is down, and this time I want to check if the left key is down. Alright, done. And let's remember to invert this one also. So invert. So now I'm checking, is it true that neither the right arrow or the left arrow is down? And only if neither one of these is down, then we stop the movement. Let's see how that works. So now I can go right or left and the movement will stop. But it's still a bit silly because when I go left, the player is still facing right, and that can't be right. So let's fix that. And one way of doing that is to simply mirror the graphics. So let's see how that works. So when the player is pressing the right arrow, everything looks fine, but when the player is pressing on the left arrow, we want to flip everything around. So I'm going to add an action here, and let's start with the torso graphic maybe. And here inside the actions there's something called set mirrored, and I'm going to set the torso mirrored when the left arrow is pressed. Let's see how that looks. So now if I go right, everything looks like that, and when I press left, then his face turns left. At the moment it looks very weird, but don't worry, we're going to flip the other stuff as well. Let's also mirror the hands and the feet. So I will just copy this one, Control C, 1, 2, and Control V, so that we have 5 of these, one for each limb, and then the torso. So let's replace the torso graphic object by right-clicking, replace object, and I will just go through each one of my limbs here and select one for each of these actions here, like that, and then the last one like that. Alright, so now everything should get mirrored, and while we're at it, let's also make it so that when we press the right arrow, we want to make sure that these are not mirrored. So I will copy everything here, and I will go here and press Control V, and now I want to make the state not mirrored for each one of these. Not mirrored. Alright, let's see how that looks. So now we're moving forward, and then when we press left, then we switch the direction, and that looks fine. Now our player is no longer sliding in a weird way. Maybe we should also move the player when he's climbing the ladder, so maybe we don't want to stop him just because he's climbing the ladder. So what I will do is I will go here into my event sheet, and let's add also the up and down arrows into this combination. So keyboard, keys down, let's put the up arrow in there, remember to reverse it or invert it, and then I will just maybe copy paste like that and select the down arrow here, and now even the climbing the ladder should work so that the player is moving his limbs, but it's not working. Oh, down it's working, but up it's not working. Did I make a mistake? Why is the up arrow not working? Yeah, because I'm not activating it. It is kind of working, it's not stopping when I press up, but I'm not activating it either. So if it stopped because I released some other key. So basically I want to, let's just make this kind of events for the up and down arrow as well, but I do not need any of this mirrored stuff. And now I simply want to activate the sign if the up arrow is pressed. Or, let's make this an OR block, so right click, make OR block, and press C to add another condition, and then we want to check from the keyboard if down arrow is pressed. So now we are activating the sign on right arrow and on left arrow. Let's see, there's an obvious mistake there. Left arrow. I made some mistake at some point, but let me just fix it here. So let's make everything mirrored on the left arrow and not mirrored on the right arrow, and then up and down arrows don't care about the mirroring, but they will activate the sine waves. Okay, everything seems to work here. Let's climb the ladder. Yeah, now we can climb the ladder even, and it's moving. Only if we stop, then the limbs are not moving either. That's, I think, a decent way of doing it. Alright, so that finishes this part, and in the next part I think it's time to dig into the saw collectible. So in the next video we are going to take a closer look at collecting the saw, and then we can start the fun part, which is cutting the trees.